136th birthday of our country and the 150th birthday of its 30th president, Calvin Coolidge.
Yeah.
My name is Rob Hammer. I work for the Coolidge Foundation. I'm the director of the Coolidge Scholarship. On behalf of the Coolidge Foundation, it's my honor today to welcome you to our Declaration of Independence reading and ceremony. We've got a wonderful program for you this morning, which I hope will provide a reminder to us all of the true meaning of this wonderful holiday. On the agenda, a group reading of the Declaration of Independence led by the Coolidge Scholars, declamations of President Coolidge's own speeches by Coolidge Cup competitors, and finally, patriotic songs sprinkled throughout the program. So to start things off, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance, so please rise and join in. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now I'd like to take this time to invite all veterans or active duty military to please stand and be recognized. Thank you for your sacrifice and service. Now, could please everyone rise again and join me in welcoming Mr. Bill Wiles, who will lead us in the national anthem.
Remember, this is not a love affair. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs were singing in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, take us that star-spangled banner yet wave, o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. Nice.
Thank you, Mr. Wiles. Now, for our first Coolidge speech declamation, and one of my personal favorite Coolidge speeches, the inspiration of the Declaration of Independence, performed by Cheris Ching of Campbell, California. Please welcome Cheris to the front.
The inspiration of the Declaration of Independence, given at Philadelphia on July 5th of 1926 on the 150th anniversary of the birth of our nation. Coincidentally, Coolidge, who also turns 150 years old today, reminds us of the miracle that it was to first birth this great nation. And it pays tributes to the revolutionary thinkers who helped make that birth possible. When we hear this speech, it is easy to imagine those first statesmen wearing their white powdered wigs and their long buttoned waistcoats, holding sharpened quills filled with wet ink, ready to sign that declaration that would make all the difference. 150 years later, Coolidge commends us for our new inventions and new ideals, but is careful to remind us not to forsake those core beliefs that first inspired our revolutionary fathers. In your honor, Coolidge, happy birthday. We meet to celebrate the birthday of America. The coming of a new life always excites our interest, although we know that in the case of the individual, it has been an infinite repetition reaching back beyond our vision. That only makes it the more wonderful. But how our interest and wonder increase when we behold the miracle of the birth of a new nation. It is to pay our tribute of reverence and respect to those who participated in such a mighty event that we annually observe the 4th day of July. It is not so much then for the purpose of undertaking to proclaim new theories and principles that this annual celebration is maintained, but rather to reaffirm and reestablish those old theories and principles which time and the unerring logic of events have demonstrated to be sound. Amid all the clash of conflicting interests, amid all the welter of partisan politics, every American can turn for solace and consolation to the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States, with the assurance and confidence that those two great charters of freedom and justice remain firm and unshaken. Whatever perils appear, whatever dangers threaten, the nation remains secure in the knowledge that the ultimate application of the law of the land will provide an adequate defense and protection. Governments do not make ideals. Ideals make governments. Governments do not make ideals, but ideals make governments. This is both historically and logically true. Of course, the government can help to sustain ideas and can create institutions through which they can be the better observed. But their source, by their very nature, is in the people. The people have to bear their own consequences. There is no method by which that burden can be shifted to the government. It is not the enactment, but the observance of laws that creates the character of a nation. About the Declaration, there is a finality that is exceedingly restful. It is often asserted that the world has made a great deal of progress since 1776, that we have had new thoughts and new experiences which have given us an edge over the people of that day, and that we may therefore very well discard their conclusions for something more modern. But that reasoning cannot be applied to this great charter. If all men are created equal, that is final. If we are endowed with inalienable rights, that is final. If the government derive their just powers from the consent of the governed, that is final. No advance, no progress can be made beyond these propositions. If anyone wishes to deny their truth or their soundness, the only direction in which he can proceed historically is not forward, but backward towards the time where there was no rights of the individual, no equality, and no rule of the people. Those who wish to proceed in that direction cannot lay claim to progress. They are reactionary. Their ideas are not more modern, but more ancient than those of our revolutionary fathers. The rights of the individual are held sacred and protected by constitutional guarantees, which even the government itself is bound not to violate. If there is any one thing among us that is established beyond question, it is self-government, the right of the people to rule. We live in an age of science and of abounding accumulation of material things. These did not create our Declaration. Our Declaration created them. The things of the Spirit come first. Unless we cling to that, all our material prosperity, overwhelming though it may appear, will turn into a barren scepter in our grasp. If we are to maintain the great heritage which has been bequeathed to us, we must be like-minded as the fathers who created it. Thank you.
Thank you, Karis. Now that we have heard President Coolidge's own thoughts on the Declaration, we will proceed to the reading of the Declaration itself. Please welcome to the front Coolidge Scholar Warren Shepherd to start us off.
The unanimous Declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind required that they should declare the causes which impel them to this declaration.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness.
Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security.
Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused to assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good.
He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures.
He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations to lands.
He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone, for the tenure of their offices and for the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us, in times of peace, standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He is affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power.
He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment from any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses.
For abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies. For taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments. For suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us.
He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely parallel in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands.
He has excited domestic insurrection amongst us and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be a ruler of a free people.
Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace friends.
We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress assembled appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be free and independent states, and they are absolved of all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved. and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
Thank you, Coolidge Scholars. I'd now like to welcome Mr. Wiles back to the front to perform America the Beautiful. Please stand and join in with Mr. Wiles.
I often thought that this should be the national anthem. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains, majesties above the fruited plain. America, God shed His grace on me, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for pilgrims steed, whose stern is passion stress, a thoroughfare for freedom deep, across the wilderness. America, God shed thine every flaw, confirm thy soul in self-control, thy liberty in law. Nice sit down. Yeah, that second verse was a killer. I'm watching Pranav going,
Okay, so now it's time for our second declamation, and this will be delivered by Mary Sanapoo of Phoenix, Arizona, who will be declaiming another Coolidge speech titled The Destiny of America. Please welcome Mary.
The Destiny of America was delivered on May 30, 1923 by Vice President Calvin Coolidge. This was in honor of Memorial Day in Northampton, Massachusetts. In this speech, he identifies the fundamental spirit of patriotism, how the spirit is to be maintained, and finally, how it is to be used to further accomplish America's destiny. He also acknowledges that while those who paid the ultimate price to honor the spirit are no longer with us, this spirit of patriotism is still very much alive. But it is up to us to carry the torch. Patriotism is easy to understand in America. It means looking out for yourself by looking out for your country. Lincoln stated the substance of the whole matter in his famous phrase, quote, "Government of the people, by the people, and for the people," end quote. A definition of the relationship between the institutions of our government and the American people entirely justifies the assertion that all things were made by them,
and without them was not anything made that was made. It is because the American government is the sole creation and possession of the people that they have always cherished it and defended it, and always will. If we perceive a destiny in America, if we believe that Providence has been the guide, our own success, our own salvation require that we should act and serve in harmony and obedience. Just at a time when Christianity was at last firmly established, when there was a general advance in learning, when there was a great spiritual awakening, America began to be revealed to the European world. Settlers came here from mixed motives. They were an inspired body of men. They had a genius for organized society on the foundation of righteousness, piety, liberty, and obedience to law. They let slip their grasp upon conventionalities that they may lay a firmer hold upon realities. The definition of the characteristics of those principles of government from which all others are deduced is a government of limited and defined powers, leaving the people supreme. The executive has the sole command of the military forces, but he cannot raise $1 of revenue. The legislature has the sole authority to levy taxes, but he cannot issue a command to a single private soldier. The judiciary interprets and declares the law and the Constitution, but it can neither create nor destroy the right of a single individual. Freedom of action is complete within moral bounds under the law which the people themselves have prescribed. Such is America. Such is the government and civilization which have grown up around the church, the town meeting, and the schoolhouse. Who can fail to see in it the hand of destiny? Who can doubt that it has been guided by divine providence? What has it not failed to give to its people and material advantages, educational opportunity, and religious consolation? Our country has not failed. Our country has been a success. You are here because you believe in it. You know that it is right. You are determined to defend it, to support it, and if need be, to fight for it. You know that America is worth fighting for. But if our republic is to be maintained and improved, it will be through the efforts and character of the individual. It will be, first of all, because of the influences which exist in the home, because it is the ideals which prevail in the home life that make up the strength of the nation. The viciousness of waste and the value of thrift must continue to be learned and understood. Civilization rests on conservation. To these must be added religion, education, and obedience to law. These are the foundation of all character in the individual and all hope in the nation. Our country does not want war. It wants peace. It has not decreed this memorial season as an honor to war. It is to the spirit of those men, exhibited in all our wars, to the spirit that places the devotion to freedom and truth above the devotion to life, that the nation pays its ever-enduring mark of reverence and respect. Quote, "Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends." This spirit is not dead. It is the most vital thing in America. It did not flow from any act of government. It is the spirit of the people themselves. Who can dare to doubt it? Who can dare to challenge it? Who shall venture to rouse it into action? From the day of the Puritan and Cavalier to the day of the last least immigrant who believes in it no less than they. Calm, Peaceful, puissant it remains, conscious of its authority, slow to anger, plenteous in mercy, seeking not to injure but to serve, the safeguard of the Republic, still the guarantee of a broader freedom, the supreme moral power of the world. It is in this spirit that we place our trust. It is to this spirit, again, with this returning year, we pledge all that we have and are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you all too. I think President Coolidge would be very pleased to see so many young people here in the church that he grew up in, thinking about the ideas and values that this country was founded on its birthday. So to conclude our program, I'm going to welcome Mr. Wiles again for a final song. This one will be the national hymn. And there should be a hymn book in your pew that you can use to follow along.
were written in 1876 for the 100th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And they were composed by Daniel Roberts, who was the pastor of St. Thomas Episcopal Church in Brandon, Vermont, just over the mountain. God of the fathers, whose almighty hand leads forth in youth, ye all the starry band of shining worlds in splendor through the skies. Our grateful songs before thy throne arise. Thy love divine hath led us in the past. In this free land, by thee our lot is cast. Be thou ruler, guardian, guide and save. Thy word of law, thy paths our chosen way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wiles. So that concludes the program for today, but we'll look forward to seeing you throughout the day. There'll be a number of events going on, multiple rounds of debate, which all judges and members of the public are welcome to sit in for. And then at noon, we'll have the annual procession down to Coolidge's grave, led by the Vermont National Guard. And then we'll have a ceremony down at the grave. So we look forward to seeing you throughout the day, and happy 4th.